Good evening, Chairman Reapy and my colleagues on the Business and Labor Committee. I'm Senator Megan Hunt, MEGANHUNT, and I'm very excited to introduce LB670 today and bring this important issue to this committee. This bill would prohibit prohibit employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. If you've been in the body or followed it in recent years, this concept will definitely not be new to you. Under Nebraska law, employers can legally discriminate against employees or prospective hires on the basis of their gender identity or sexual orientation. This means that LGBTQ Nebraskans can legally be denied job opportunities they're otherwise qualified for, passed over for promotions when they're the most qualified candidate, be denied training necessary to do their jobs, endure harassment or retaliation, have their hours cut, be given less preferred position assignments, or even be fired purely based on who they are and who they love. LB670 is a unique bill because this bill would apply to employers of all sizes. I've introduced bills in the past that just applied to businesses of 15 or more employees, but this bill would apply these protections to employers of all sizes. You'll see in the text of the bill that the way we did this is by creating two classes of employers and defining them by Class 1 employers and Class 2 employers. Class 1 employers have more than 15 employees, and Class 2 have fewer. The gender identity and sexual orientation anti-discrimination provisions are then applied to both classes of employers while exempting the smaller employers from other requirements that are included in the Fair Employment Practice Act that might be more difficult for small businesses to implement. It costs absolutely nothing. It costs $0 for employers to not discriminate against their workers based on their gender identity or sexual orientation. I've gotten a lot of emails, and you probably have too, from people saying this is government overreach or that this will harm small businesses, but I can't think of any circumstance where it would be more difficult or more costly to make an employee feel like they're not being discriminated against because of their sexual orientation or gender identity. If someone is doing a poor job at work, you can still fire them. Nothing in this bill prevents you from firing people with just cause. All companies will still have the right under this bill. It also wouldn't apply to any religious institutions or anything like that. So employers can still deal with their employees as they see fit. It's just that under this bill, if this were to pass, no employer could keep someone in the back room or fail to give them a raise or fire them just because they're gay. One question that I continue to get is regarding the Supreme Court Bostock versus Clayton County decision that prohibited discrimination against LGBTQ people in employment and public accommodations, and why this bill is necessary. We've talked about this for several years since the Bostock decision came down, and I can explain it to you here on the record too. After the Bostock decision, the Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission began processing cases on the bases of sexual orientation and gender identity. I had extensive discussions with the commission in my past efforts on this topic, and they informed me that it would be very helpful for them to more expediently complete their investigatory duties if we had this minimum standard in state law. Without clear coverage in state law, cases had to be taken federally. When the state law doesn't mirror the federal baseline, it creates inconsistency and confusion. The Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission said that smaller businesses that don't have legal counsel often don't understand their rights and responsibilities in this area, and the NEOC ends up needing to educate them. Getting this into state law would allow them to fully leverage all federal funds available to help protect Nebraskans from discrimination. They also indicated that clarity in state statute and leveraging funds could also help the NEOC conduct education and outreach efforts for employers about what their rights are and what their responsibilities are to protect themselves and to help them avoid costly litigation. By passing this into state law, we provide an avenue for recourse, a state or local court instead of a federal court, that's more accessible and affordable for parties on each side. Litigating in federal court is costly and time-consuming for all stakeholders, and as it stands, we have a patchwork of federal, state, and local laws that all have different employment thresholds, creating uncertainty for employees. Business leaders see this as essential to economic growth. The Omaha Chamber has indicated that their membership is considering this a priority this year and is willing to throw more support behind it than ever before as part of their recruitment and retention efforts. Representatives with the Omaha Chamber told me they'd heard about talent recruits not wanting to come here for fear of being unprotected. So this is not just some abstract fear, it's really happening, and it's been happening for decades in Nebraska. Polling from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln shows that 75% of Nebraskans support these protections, including 67% of those in small towns and 82% in medium and large cities, including 78% of Catholics. The fact that Nebraska's laws don't reflect the beliefs of our state's citizens make us look closed-minded and regressive. I conducted an informal survey on social media to which hundreds of Nebraskans responded. One of the key takeaways of that survey is that young people don't want to live in a place where the culture doesn't reflect their values. Workers are hesitant to stay or come to a state that doesn't offer protections and security to their positions. Creating a home in a community that doesn't legally appear to be supportive of who you are is very difficult. We are competing with our neighboring states for top talent, and we can't afford to be a state that tells young people they are not welcome here. I and over 67 other Nebraskans who are LGBTQ would appreciate your support of LB670, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from the committee? Senator Hanson, please.
Is this similar to Senator Day's bill we just had? Okay, so is this, just so I can get clarity, is this a federal law now, but we're making it against state?
So,
codifying?
at the federal level, when they passed the Bostock decision, it said that that gender identity and sexual orientation is included in non-discrimination clauses, but we don't have that in statute in Nebraska. Okay. And so it's ended up creating more work for the Equal Opportunity Commission, and it just makes us look really bad.
Okay, so it's not so it's not a federal law yet, it's a court decision.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get straight. Okay, thank you.
I have two questions. I think you come in and said there was no cost, and yet there's a fiscal note of 80,000, 81.
The fiscal note is a full-time employee for the Equal Opportunity Commission, and I think that seems fair. It really highlights the need for this type of legislation because they would be getting enough cases to hire another worker. What I said was it was free for employers to not discriminate. And so, I mean, this is an estimate, of course, this fiscal note. If employers don't discriminate and the Equal Employment Commission doesn't have a lot of cases to handle with their caseload, then that cost goes down. But
it's an FTE the way I read it, and so that's probably not.
That's right. That's what I said. That's correct.
The other question that I have is, this looks like it has been introduced something similar. I'm not saying the same in previous years. In 13, 15, 17, 19, and 21, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is there something that's different this year, or is it?
No, this bill would apply to all employers, and yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for carrying the bill. Thank you for being here. For the record, there were 17 letters or emails proponents. There were 114 opponents, and there were 0 in the neutral capacity. So, welcome back. And
thank you, colleagues. I don't have a close prepared. I wanted to just hear what some folks said and then sort of respond to that. For religious employers, I'll tell you guys, the act that this bill is amending, the Nebraska Fair Employment Practice Act, it has an exemption for religious companies. Section 48-1103, and this exempts religious corporations, religious associations. They are exempt from this law, and they are exempt from these requirements. So this would cover any religious employer such as Creighton University, or the Catholic Conference, or the Christian Bookstore, or whatever. 48-1103 says, The Nebraska Fair Employment Practice Act shall not apply to a religious corporation, association, or society with respect to the employment of individuals. Tom Benzer from the Catholic Conference said maybe this bill would be improved with a clause or an amendment or something saying that somebody wouldn't have to violate their sincerely held beliefs. But what if someone's sincerely held beliefs is that, not all slave owners were that bad, or that, men are horrible? What if I said I hate men and I'm not going to hire any men? What if that was a sincerely held belief? It is so humiliating year after year after year to come in here and debate your humanity with a bunch of people who are listening to a church that comes in here and putting that over the experiences of their fellow Nebraskans. We cannot pass laws based on religious morality. You can have these views, that's fine. When the Civil Rights Act passed, it was the same thing. It was people saying, oh, well, people have sincerely held beliefs. What about this side? What about that side? It's a burden on employers, all of this. There are all kinds of states that have gender identity and sexual orientation in their non-discrimination statutes. There is no reason that Nebraska can't do this just fine. And in fact, if we passed this, I promise you, A, none of you would ever think about it again, because B, it would never affect you in your life one time. For those who this bill affects, it would mean a great deal to them. For those it doesn't affect, which is all of you, you'll never even know it's there. It's very depressing and very unserious to work so hard to be elected to do great things for Nebraskans, to come in here and debate if gay people are people. And we're going to be doing that this whole session. That's what happened across the hall today. The Genital Inspection Act from Kathleen Kauth, to look at the kids' privates before they're allowed to play a sport. That's the same thing that happened last week, to say, putting the government, between what a parent and a child knows it's best for the mental health of that child. And this is part and parcel to all of that. And all of these attacks on the LGBTQ community, on the queer community, are hurting Nebraska. This is an easy way for us to signal to the greater community in Nebraska and across this nation that we are not as bigoted as we seem. You can personally be bigoted. Nothing that I put in any law, no law that we can ever pass would ever change that. But can we at least act like we're not going to just openly discriminate? Thank you. If you have any questions about the bill, it does not discriminate against religious employers, so put that out of your head. So if you're opposed to the bill, just oppose it. You don't have to make up a reason.
Other questions from the committee? Senator Hansen.
What made this different than the previous versions? Did the previous versions have a penalty associated with it? Do you remember?
No, it just adds sexual orientation and gender identity to the existing statute.
So that's why I went to Judiciary before and asked in business, I know that's kind of odd. It's not.
I don't know. I can get back to you about why.
No, yeah, don't worry about
I'm
it.
sure if I thought about it for 30 more seconds, I could
That's
come up
fine.
with the answer. But
That's cool. Thanks.
when you're in the hot seat.
Okay. Thank you very much for